Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The acrid stench of cheap liquor and stale sweat permeated the dimly lit bar on the outskirts of Earth's forgotten colony. Lucas hunched over the scarred wooden counter, his calloused fingers wrapped tightly around a glass of amber liquid. The jagged scar that bisected his weathered face seemed to deepen in the flickering neon light, a permanent reminder of battles long past. He raised the glass to his lips, relishing the burn as it slid down his throat. The bartender, a grizzled old man with cybernetic implants protruding from his temples, cast a wary glance in Lucas's direction before returning to polishing a set of grimy glasses. "Another," Lucas grunted, sliding the empty tumbler across the counter. The bartender's mechanical eye whirred as it focused on Lucas. "You sure that's wise, soldier? You've been here since sundown." Lucas's hand instinctively moved to the holster at his hip, fingers brushing against the worn grip of his blaster. "I didn't ask for your opinion, old man. I asked for another drink." The tension in the air was palpable as the two men stared each other down. Finally, the bartender shrugged and reached for the bottle. "Your credits, your liver," he muttered. As the amber liquid sloshed into the glass, the bar's rusty doors burst open with a screech that set Lucas's teeth on edge. He turned, hand still hovering near his weapon, only to freeze at the sight before him. A woman stumbled through the entrance, her cerulean skin glistening with a sheen of sweat. Her silver hair, tangled and matted, fell in waves around her face, partially obscuring eyes that glowed an eerie violet in the bar's dim light. In her arms, she clutched a small bundle that squirmed and whimpered. Lucas's breath caught in his throat as recognition dawned. An Avrian. He hadn't seen one of their kind since. He pushed the memory aside, forcing himself to focus on the present. The woman's gaze darted around the bar, desperation etched into every line of her face. When her eyes locked onto Lucas, something akin to hope flickered across her features. She stumbled towards him, her movements unsteady but determined. "You," she rasped, her voice carrying the melodic lilt characteristic of her species. "You look like a man who can protect." Lucas turned back to his drink, hoping she'd take the hint and leave him be. But the woman persisted, sliding onto the stool beside him with a grace that belied her disheveled appearance. "Please," she whispered, leaning in close. The scent of ozone and something alien filled Lucas's nostrils. "I need your help. My son and we need protection. I'm willing to offer myself as your concubine in exchange for safety." Lucas choked on his drink, sputtering as he turned to face her. "Lady, I don't know what kind of establishment you think this is, but—" His words died in his throat as he met her gaze. The raw desperation in those violet depths stirred something within him, a feeling he'd thought long dead. His eyes drifted to the bundle in her arms, where a pair of wide, innocent eyes peered out at him. "Shit," he muttered, running a hand through his cropped hair. "Look, I'm not in the business of taking in strays, especially not ones that come with complications." The woman's lips curved into a sad smile. "My name is Avria, and this is my son, Ren. We've traveled across galaxies, fleeing a conflict that threatens to consume everything we hold dear. You're our last hope." Lucas snorted. "Last hope? Lady, I'm nobody's hope. I'm just a washed-up soldier trying to drink away the memories of a war I'd rather forget." Avria's free hand shot out, gripping Lucas's arm with surprising strength. "Then you understand the horrors of conflict, the price of survival. Please, I beg you, just hear my story." Lucas looked down at her hand, then back to her face. He should shake her off, tell her to find some other sucker to play hero. But something in her eyes, in the way she cradled her child, made him hesitate. "Fine," he growled, signaling to the bartender, But we're going to need something stronger than this piss water for this conversation. As the bartender set down 2 glasses of a viscous, green liquid, Avrea began her tale. She spoke of a galaxy torn apart by ancient grudges and newfound ambitions. Of her people, the Avrians, caught in the crossfire of a war that threatened to erase their very existence. "Ren is more than just my son," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "He carries within him the legacy of our people, a genetic memory that could ensure our survival, even if our world falls." Lucas listened, his expression impassive even as his mind raced. It was a fantastical story, one he might have dismissed outright if not for the earnestness in Avrea's eyes and the weight of the sleeping child in her arms. "So, what? You want me to play bodyguard to the savior of your species?" Lucas scoffed, but there was less bite in his tone than before. Avrea's gaze dropped to her drink, which remained untouched. "I want you to give us a chance at survival. In return, I offer myself as your concubine, as is the custom of my people when seeking protection from a warrior of renown." Lucas's eyebrows shot up. "Warrior of renown? Lady, I don't know what stories you've heard, but I'm no hero. I'm just a man trying to forget the past." "Your eyes tell a different story," Avria countered, her gaze intense. "They speak of battles fought and lost, of comrades fallen and innocents saved. You may not see yourself as a hero, Lucas, but to us, you could be salvation." The use of his name startled him. He hadn't introduced himself, hadn't even told the bartender his real name in the months he'd been drowning his sorrows here. "How did you—" "Your reputation precedes you, even in the far reaches of the galaxy," Avria explained, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. "Lucas Stormbreaker, the man who single-handedly held the line at the Battle of Nexus Prime." Lucas flinched at the mention of that cursed place. Memories of screaming soldiers and burning skies threatened to overwhelm him. He gripped his glass tightly, knuckles turning white. "That man is dead," he growled. "He died on that battlefield along with everyone else." Avria's hand found his again, her touch impossibly gentle. "No, Lucas. He's sitting right here, drowning in guilt and self-loathing. But he's still alive, still capable of making a difference." Lucas looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since she'd entered the bar. Beyond the desperation and fear, he saw a strength that reminded him of the soldiers he'd fought alongside, a determination born of love and the will to survive. He glanced down at Ren, the child's peaceful face a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within Lucas's mind. Could he really turn them away? Condemn them to whatever fate awaited them out in the cold vastness of space? "Damn it," he muttered, downing the rest of his drink in one swift motion. The alien liquor burned a path down his throat, settling in his stomach like liquid fire. "I must be out of my damn mind." Avrea's eyes widened, hope blooming across her features. "Does this mean—" "It means I'll help you," Lucas cut her off, his voice gruff. "But let's get one thing straight. This isn't some fairy tale. I'm not your knight in shining armor, and I'm sure as hell not taking you as a— what did you call it? Concubine?" A flush of deeper blue crept across Avria's cheeks. "It is our way, a bond of protection and intimacy." Lucas held up a hand, stopping her before she could elaborate further. "Save it. If we're doing this, we're doing it my way. You and the kid need a place to lay low, fine. But that's where it ends. No bonds, no intimacy, and definitely no playing house. Got it?" Avrea nodded, though Lucas couldn't help but notice the flicker of disappointment in her eyes. "Understood. Thank you, Lucas. You have no idea what this means to us." Lucas stood, tossing a handful of credits onto the counter. "Yeah, well, don't thank me yet. This whole thing's liable to get us all killed." As they made their way towards the exit, the bartender called out, "Hey, soldier, you sure you know what you're getting into?" Lucas paused at the door, looking back at the old man. A wry smile twisted his scarred features. "Not a damn clue. But then again, when has that ever stopped me?" With that, he ushered Avrea and Wren out into the neon-lit streets of the colony. The cool night air hit him like a slap to the face, clearing some of the alcohol-induced fog from his mind. "My place isn't far," he said, scanning the shadows for any signs of threat. "Stay close and keep that kid quiet. Last thing we need is to draw attention." Avrea nodded, pulling Wren closer to her chest. As they walked, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just signed up for something far bigger than a simple protection detail. The weight of Avrea's story, of the conflict raging across the stars, settled onto his shoulders like a familiar burden. He'd sworn never to pick up arms again, to stay out of the galaxy's endless wars. Yet here he was, potentially stepping right into the middle of one, all because of a pair of violet eyes and a child's innocent gaze. "I must be losing my mind," he muttered to himself as they approached his run-down apartment complex. Avrea's voice drifted to him on the night breeze, soft but filled with conviction. "Or perhaps you're finally finding it again." Lucas grunted non-committally, but something stirred within him at her words, a spark of the man he used to be, before war and loss had hollowed him out. As he punched in the access code to his building, Lucas cast one last glance at the stars above. They seemed to shine brighter tonight, as if heralding the beginning of something momentous. "Welcome to your new home," he said gruffly as the door slid open. "Such as it is." Avrea stepped inside, Wren still cradled in her arms. As she passed Lucas, their eyes met once more. The gratitude and hope he saw there made his chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. With a shake of his head, Lucas followed them inside, the door hissing shut behind him. Whatever came next, he had a feeling his life would never be the same. The door to Lucas's apartment slid open with a reluctant hiss, revealing a space that could generously be described as Spartan. Bare walls, a threadbare couch, and a kitchenette that had seen better days greeted Avrea as she stepped inside, Wren still nestled against her chest. Lucas flicked on the lights, wincing at the harsh glare. "It's not much," he muttered, suddenly aware of the layer of dust coating every surface. "But it's secure. No one gets in or out without my say-so." Avrea's eyes roamed the small space, taking in every detail. Her gaze lingered on the weapons locker in the corner, its reinforced door a stark reminder of Lucas's past. "It's perfect," she said softly, her melodic voice filling the room. "Thank you, Lucas." He grunted in response, moving past her to clear some space on the couch. "You and the kid can take the bedroom. I'll sleep out here." Avrea opened her mouth to protest, but Lucas cut her off with a sharp gesture. "Don't argue. You need the rest more than I do." As he helped her settle in, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his gut. It had been years since he'd shared his living space with anyone, let alone an alien woman and her child. The walls seemed to close in around him, making it hard to breathe. That first night set the tone for the days to come. Lucas tossed and turned on the couch, his dreams haunted by the ghosts of battles past. He jolted awake more than once, hand reaching for a weapon that wasn't there, only to be met with the unfamiliar sound of Wren's soft breathing from the other room. Morning brought little relief. Lucas stumbled into the kitchenette, desperate for caffeine, only to find Avrea already there. She stood by the window, bathed in the soft light of dawn, her silver hair cascading down her back. For a moment, Lucas forgot to breathe. "Good morning," Avrea said, turning to face him. Her violet eyes seemed to glow in the early light. "I hope I didn't wake you." Lucas shook his head, pushing past her to grab a mug. "I was up anyway," he grunted, pouring himself a generous helping of synthetic coffee. As the days wore on, Lucas found himself increasingly on edge. The constant presence of Avria and Wren grated on his nerves, disrupting the carefully constructed solitude he'd built around himself. Wren's cries in the night sent him spiraling back to memories of wounded soldiers on distant battlefields. One particularly bad night, Lucas woke up screaming, sweat pouring down his face. Before he could fully regain his senses, Avria was there, her cool hand on his forehead. "It's okay," she murmured, her voice a soothing balm. "You're safe, Lucas. It's just a dream." He jerked away from her touch, anger flaring hot and bright. "I don't need your comfort," he snarled, stumbling to his feet. "I've dealt with this on my own for years. I don't need you or anyone else." Hurt flashed across Avria's face, but she stood her ground. "You don't have to face this alone anymore, Lucas. Let me help you." "Help me?" Lucas laughed bitterly. "You're the reason I'm in this mess in the first place. You and your kid dragging me back into a war I swore I'd never fight again." Avria's eyes hardened, a spark of defiance igniting in their depths. "We didn't ask for this war, Lucas. We're victims of it just like you were. But unlike you, we haven't given up hope." Her words hit him like a physical blow, leaving him breathless. Before he could respond, Wren's cries echoed from the bedroom. Avria cast one last, disappointed look at Lucas before turning away to tend to her son. Left alone in the darkened living room, Lucas slumped back onto the couch, his head in his hands. The walls of carefully constructed isolation he'd built around himself were crumbling, and he didn't know how to stop it. As the days passed, Lucas found himself increasingly aware of Avria's presence. She moved through his space with a grace that seemed otherworldly, her azure skin practically glowing in the dim light of the apartment. More than once he caught himself staring, only to look away quickly when she met his gaze. Avria, for her part, seemed determined to break through Lucas's defenses. She sought out opportunities for conversation, asking about his life before the war, his experiences on different planets. When he rebuffed her attempts, she changed tactics, instead regaling him with stories of her own world. "On Avria," she said one evening as they sat at the small dining table, Wren sleeping peacefully in a makeshift crib nearby, "the bond between protector and protected is sacred. It goes beyond mere physical attraction or convenience. It's a meeting of souls, a joining of destinies." Lucas shifted uncomfortably in his seat, all too aware of the way Avria's hand rested mere inches from his own. "Yeah, well, things work differently here on Earth. We don't go in for all that mystical mumbo-jumbo." Avria's lips curved into a small smile. "Are you so sure about that, Lucas? I've seen the way you look at the stars. There's a part of you that yearns for something more, something greater than yourself." He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You don't know anything about me," he growled, turning away to hide the flush creeping up his neck. But as he stomped off to the bathroom, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, Avria saw more of him than he was comfortable admitting. The tension between them continued to build, a slow-burning fire that threatened to consume them both. Lucas found himself simultaneously drawn to and repelled by Avria's presence. Her attempts at seduction, while subtle, were unmistakable. A lingering touch here, a meaningful glance there. It was enough to drive him to distraction. One morning he emerged from the bathroom to find Avria in the middle of her morning stretches. Her lithe body moved with fluid grace, each motion accentuating her alien beauty. Lucas froze, transfixed by the sight. Avria caught his eye, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Care to join me?" she asked, her voice low and inviting. Lucas swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. I need to check the perimeter," he muttered, all but fleeing the apartment. As he paced the corridors of the building, Lucas berated himself for his weakness. He was a soldier, damn it. He'd faced down entire armies without flinching. So why did one alien woman have him so off balance? Days turned into weeks, and despite Lucas's best efforts to maintain his emotional distance, he found himself slowly warming to Avria and Ren's presence. The boy's innocent curiosity about everything around him was infectious, and Lucas couldn't help but be drawn in. One afternoon, he caught himself teaching Ren how to play an old Earth game called Catch with a balled-up piece of paper. The child's delighted laughter echoed through the apartment, and for the first time in years, Lucas felt the corners of his mouth tugging upward into a genuine smile. Avria watched from the doorway, her eyes shining with an emotion Lucas couldn't quite name. "You're good with him," she said softly. Lucas shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "It's just a game," he mumbled, but the warmth in his chest told a different story. As the ice between them began to thaw, Avria opened up more about her past. She spoke of her homeworld, a place of crystalline spires and endless oceans, of the weight of responsibility that had been placed on her shoulders from birth as a member of the ruling caste. "I never asked for any of it," she confessed one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "The power, the expectations, all I ever wanted was to live a life of my own choosing." Lucas found himself nodding in understanding. "I know what you mean," he said, surprising himself with his honesty. "When I joined the military, I thought I was doing the right thing, protecting people, making a difference. But in the end—" He trailed off, the weight of unspoken memories hanging heavy in the air between them. Avria reached out, her hand covering his. This time, Lucas didn't pull away. "Tell me," she said simply. And so he did. The words poured out of him like a dam breaking, years of pent-up grief and anger finally finding release. He told her of the battles he'd fought, the friends he'd lost, the innocents he'd failed to save, of the crushing guilt that had driven him to this backwater colony, seeking oblivion in the bottom of a bottle. Avria listened without judgment, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of Lucas's emotions. When he finally fell silent, exhausted and raw, she simply wrapped her arms around him, holding him close. For the first time in years, Lucas allowed himself to be comforted. The next morning brought a shift in their dynamic. The air between them crackled with unspoken possibilities, a newfound understanding that went beyond words. Lucas found himself seeking out Avria's company, no longer content to sulk in solitude. But just as they were beginning to find their footing, reality came crashing back in. Lucas noticed unfamiliar faces in the neighborhood, strangers asking pointed questions about a blue-skinned woman and her child. His instincts, honed by years of combat, screamed danger. "We need to be ready," he told Avria, his voice grim as he began pulling weapons from his locker. "They've found us." Avria's face paled, her arms tightening around Ren. "What do we do?" Lucas met her gaze, steel in his eyes. "We fight, and this time, I'm not running away." As he began laying out plans for their defense, Lucas realized that somewhere along the way, Avria and Ren had become more than just a responsibility. They had become his people, the ones he would fight and die to protect. The old soldier in him stirred, muscles remembering long-forgotten training. But this time, it wasn't just duty driving him forward. It was something deeper, something he wasn't quite ready to name. As night fell, Lucas took up position by the window, his rifle a comforting weight in his hands. Avria stood beside him, Ren sleeping fitfully in the makeshift bunker they'd created in the bedroom. "Whatever happens," Lucas said, his voice low and intense, "I want you to know that I—" Avria pressed a finger to his lips, silencing him. "I know," she said softly, her violet eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Me too." The moment stretched between them, fraught with tension and unspoken emotions. Then, in the distance, the sound of approaching vehicles shattered the silence. Lucas tightened his grip on his weapon, a grim smile spreading across his face. "Showtime," he muttered. As the first shots rang out, Lucas felt more alive than he had in years. With Avria at his side and Ren to protect, he finally had something worth fighting for. Whatever came next, he was ready to face it head-on. The battle for their future had begun. The night air crackled with tension as Lucas peered through the scope of his rifle. The distant rumble of approaching vehicles grew louder, punctuated by the sharp retort of weapon fire. He felt a familiar calm settle over him, the battlefield clarity that had kept him alive through countless engagements. "They're coming in from the east," he muttered, more to himself than to Avria. "At least a dozen, maybe more, heavy weaponry." Avria's voice was steady when she replied, "We've faced worse odds." Lucas glanced at her, surprised by the steel in her tone. Gone was the frightened refugee he'd first encountered in that dingy bar. In her place stood a warrior, eyes blazing with determination. "You've been holding out on me," he said, a hint of admiration creeping into his voice. A wry smile played at Avria's lips. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Lucas. My people aren't just scholars and diplomats. We're warriors too when we need to be." Before Lucas could respond, the first volley of energy blasts slammed into the building. The walls shuddered, dust raining down from the ceiling. In the makeshift bunker, Ren let out a frightened cry. "Go to him," Lucas ordered, already moving to take up a better firing position. "I'll hold them off as long as I can." Avria hesitated for a moment, conflict clear in her eyes. Then she nodded sharply and darted towards the bedroom. Lucas allowed himself a brief moment to watch her go before turning his full attention to the battle at hand. The next few minutes were a blur of gunfire and explosions. Lucas fell into a rhythm, muscle memory taking over as he picked off targets with ruthless efficiency. But for every enemy he dropped, two more seemed to take their place. "We can't hold them off forever," he growled as Avria rejoined him, a sleek energy pistol clutched in her hand. "We need a plan B." Avria's eyes darted around the room, assessing their options. "The building next door," she said suddenly. "If we can make it to the roof, we might be able to lose them in the maze of catwalks and pipelines." Lucas nodded grimly. It was a risky plan, but it was better than being sitting ducks. "All right, you get Ren. I'll cover our retreat." As Avria disappeared into the bedroom once more, Lucas redoubled his efforts, laying down a punishing barrage of suppressing fire. The acrid smell of ozone and burned plastics filled the air, bringing back memories of battles long past. "Ready!" Avria's voice cut through the chaos. She stood in the doorway, Ren clutched tightly to her chest. The boy's eyes were wide with fear, but he remained eerily silent. Lucas nodded, tossing her a spare energy clip. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, go!" They burst out of the apartment in a hail of gunfire. Lucas moved on autopilot, years of training kicking in as he shielded Avria and Ren with his body. They made it to the stairwell, the sounds of pursuit hot on their heels. As they climbed, Lucas became aware of a strange humming in the air. At first he thought it was just the ringing in his ears from the firefight, but as they reached the roof access, the sound intensified. "Avria," he panted. "What the hell is that noise?" She turned to him, her face a mask of concern, and was that pride? "It's Ren," she said softly. "His abilities are manifesting." Before Lucas could process that bombshell, the roof access door exploded outward in a shower of metal and sparks. Their pursuers poured onto the roof, weapons raised. "Surrender now," a harsh voice commanded, "and we might let you live long enough to see your precious empire fall." Lucas tensed, ready to make a final stand. But before he could move, the air around them seemed to ripple and distort. The pursuing soldiers stumbled, looks of confusion and fear crossing their faces. Ren's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, his small body trembling with barely contained energy. The humming grew to a fever pitch, and suddenly, their attackers were thrown backward as if hit by an invisible wave. "Holy shit," Lucas breathed, staring at the child in awe. Avria's voice was filled with a mixture of pride and sadness. "Now you see why they hunt us, why Ren must be protected at all costs." The moment of respite was short-lived. More soldiers were pouring onto the roof, and even Ren's incredible abilities couldn't hold them all back. Lucas made a split-second decision. "The catwalk," he shouted, gesturing to a narrow metal walkway connecting their building to the next. "Go! I'll hold them off!" Avria's eyes widened in understanding and fear. "Lucas, no! We won't leave you!" He met her gaze, trying to convey everything he couldn't say out loud. "You have to, for Ren, for your people. Go." For a moment it seemed like Avria might argue. Then she nodded, tears glistening in her violet eyes. "May the stars guide you, Lucas Stormbreaker," she whispered. As Avria and Ren made their way across the precarious catwalk, Lucas turned to face the oncoming horde. He felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. This was it, his last stand. At least this time he was fighting for something that mattered. The battle that followed was brutal and chaotic. Lucas lost track of time, his world narrowing to the space between heartbeats and trigger pulls. He was vaguely aware of the sound of a ship's engines roaring to life nearby. Good. Avria and Ren were getting away. Just as Lucas was starting to think this might be the end, a familiar voice cut through the din of battle. "Lucas! Duck!" He dropped instinctively, years of combat training taking over. A burst of energy fire sailed over his head, cutting down the soldiers that had been advancing on his position. Avria stood at the other end of the roof, her face set in grim determination as she wielded an energy rifle with deadly precision. "I told you," she called out, a fierce grin on her face. "We're not leaving you behind." A surge of emotion threatened to overwhelm Lucas, but he pushed it down. There would be time for feelings later, if they survived this. Together, they fought their way back to where Ren waited in the idling ship. As they reached the boarding ramp, a stray energy blast caught Lucas in the shoulder, spinning him around. He stumbled, his vision blurring. "Lucas!" Avria's cry seemed to come from far away. He felt her arms around him, pulling him into the ship. As the hatch sealed behind them, darkness claimed him. When Lucas came to, the first thing he noticed was the gentle hum of a ship's engines. He blinked, his vision slowly focusing on a familiar face hovering above him. "Welcome back," Avria said softly, relief evident in her voice. Lucas tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in his shoulder. "How long was I out?" "A few hours," Avria replied, gently pushing him back down. "We're well clear of Earth's atmosphere now. They won't find us out here." As the fog of unconsciousness cleared, memories of the battle came flooding back. "Ren," Lucas said suddenly, "is he—" "He's fine," Avria assured him, gesturing to where the boy slept peacefully in a makeshift bed nearby. Exhausted from using his abilities, but unharmed. Lucas let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Good. That's good." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the soft beeping of medical equipment and Ren's gentle breathing. Lucas found his gaze drawn to Avria, really seeing her for the first time since their mad escape. Her silver hair was matted with sweat and grime, her blue skin marred by cuts and bruises. But her eyes shone with a fierce light that took his breath away. "You came back for me," he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. Avria's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. "Of course I did," she said simply. "We're family now, remember?" The word family hit Lucas like a physical blow. How long had it been since he'd allowed himself to care about anyone that deeply? Since he'd had people who cared about him in return? Before he could second-guess himself, Lucas pulled Avria down to him, capturing her lips in a searing kiss. She responded with equal fervor, years of pent-up emotion and unspoken feelings pouring out between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "I thought I'd lost everything worth fighting for," he murmured. "But you and Ren, you've given me a reason to live again." Avria's smile was radiant. "And you've given us a future," she replied. "A chance at a life free from fear and persecution." A soft sound from across the room caught their attention. Ren stirred in his sleep, his small face scrunching up as if sensing the emotional atmosphere. "Papa," he mumbled, the words slurred with sleep but unmistakable. Lucas felt his heart skip a beat. He looked at Avria, seeing his own wonder and joy reflected in her eyes. "I guess it's official now," she said, a teasing lilt in her voice. "You're stuck with us, Lucas Stormbreaker." He chuckled, pulling her close once more. "Wouldn't have it any other way." As the ship carried them deeper into the vast expanse of space, Lucas allowed himself to imagine a future he'd never dared hope for. A life with Avria and Ren, somewhere far from the conflicts that had defined his existence for so long. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges ahead, dangers to face and overcome. But for the first time in years, Lucas felt truly alive. He had a family to protect, a love to cherish, and a future worth fighting for. "So," he said, a hint of his old swagger creeping into his voice, "where to now, Captain?" Avria's eyes sparkled with mischief and adventure. "Anywhere we want, my love. The universe is ours to explore." As they plotted a course for distant stars, Lucas felt a sense of peace settle over him. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. And that, he realized, was all that truly mattered. The end of one chapter, but the beginning of a grand adventure. Lucas, Avria, and Ren, a family forged in the crucible of conflict, now bound for the infinite possibilities of the cosmos. Their story was just beginning, and the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter in welcome. Dear listeners, thank you for joining us on this interstellar journey through love, loss, and redemption. We hope you enjoyed the tale of Lucas, Avria, and little Ren as much as we enjoyed sharing it with you. As we bid farewell to our unlikely family, we can't help but be reminded of other great space epics. Perhaps you caught echoes of Han Solo's reluctant heroism, or the found family dynamics of Firefly's ragtag crew. Maybe Ren's awakening abilities brought to mind the Force-sensitive younglings of the Star Wars universe, or the evolved humans of childhood's end. But beyond these nods to the sci-fi greats, we hope you found something more profound in Lucas's story. His final words to Avria, "Wouldn't have it any other way," speak to a universal truth that transcends the boundaries of our galaxy. Lucas's journey reminds us of the transformative power of love and connection. A man once lost to his own demons, he found purpose and redemption in the most unexpected places, in the arms of an alien refugee and the innocent eyes of her child. It's a poignant reminder that sometimes the family we choose is the one that saves us. In a vast and often cold universe, having someone to fight for, to live for, can be the difference between merely existing and truly living. Lucas's transformation from a bitter, isolated veteran to a man willing to sacrifice everything for his newfound family shows us the incredible strength we can find when we open our hearts to others. As you go forward from this story, we hope you'll carry with you the lesson that Lucas learned among the stars, that no matter how dark the void may seem, There's always hope for a brighter future if we have the courage to reach for it, and the wisdom to recognize the connections that make life worth living. Thank you once again for listening. May your own journey through this vast cosmos be filled with adventure, love, and the joy of found family. Until our next tale, may the stars guide your way.